The last group of pathogens that I would like to discuss is the group that contains the nematodes. Nematodes are small worm-like organisms, and there are all kinds of different types of nematodes. There are nematodes that feed on bacteria, there are nematodes that feed on fungi, there are even nematodes that feed on other nematodes. The group of nematodes that we're interested in are those that can cause plant disease. Nematodes in general are very complex, probably as complex in their own way as the fungi that we discussed. Nematodes are animal-like. They have a digestive system, they have a sensory system, they also have a reproductive system. Nematodes are relatively small. Some types of nematodes are large enough that you might be able to see them with the naked eye, but most of the time if you want to see a nematode, you need to use a light microscope. As I mentioned, nematodes have a reproductive system and they reproduce by laying eggs. To give you a sense of what a nematode looks like, this is a photo of a soybean cyst nematode. You can see that it's very worm-like. The head of the nematode is in the lower right. The tail of the nematode is in the upper left. There's a black arrow in this photo that points to this little dagger-like structure that's in the mouth of the nematode, and that's something called a stylet. It's kind of a modified tooth, and the nematode uses this to punch a hole in plant tissue, and then through that wound it can feed. If you take a look down the length of the nematode, about a third of the way down, you'll start to see this kind of granular material. That's all ovary. This is a female nematode. And nematodes in general have a great capacity to lay lots and lots of eggs. Plant pathogenic nematodes typically infect plant roots, and the most common nematode disease you're going to encounter is root knot nematode. There's a white arrow in the photo pointing to the swollen area in the root that's called a gall or a knot, and this growth is induced by nematodes colonizing the root tissue. In particular, it's the females that are the problem. They tunnel into the root, they set up a feeding site, and as they feed, they secrete saliva into the wound, and this saliva stimulates the surrounding plant cells to grow very large. They grow very quickly, and they divide like crazy, and that's what induces the gall or knot in the root system. As you can imagine, this overgrowth in the roots can really disrupt water and nutrient movement in the root system, and that induces stunting and what appear to be nutrient deficiency symptoms on the above ground parts of the plant. The best way to deal with this sort of nematode, if you find it, particularly if you're dealing with this disease on something like tomato, and this is an example of the tomato root system in this slide, is you try to buy a variety of tomato that has resistance to this nematode. What you want to look for when you're looking at tomato varieties is look for that alphabet soup after the variety name. Oftentimes you'll see a V and an F and maybe two Fs. If you ever see an N, that stands for nematode, and typically those varieties have been bred for resistance to this particular pathogen. Most plant pathogenic nematodes colonize plant roots, but there is a genus called Aphelincoides where those nematodes infect plant leaves. This nematode is commonly called the foliar nematode. This nematode is a problem on a variety of different types of herbaceous ornamentals. In this particular slide, an example of this nematode on mum. You can see a lot of yellowing in the leaves associated with the colonization by the nematode. Also, if you look very carefully, you will see areas where there appear to be somewhat angular leaf spots. With foliar nematode, very similar to what I described with bacteria, the nematode is able to colonize the leaf tissue. It will colonize between the veins, but when it gets to veins, it's unable to cross the veins, so the veins form the edge of the infected area. So you get these very straight-edged looking spots. If you ever see angular leaf spots on a plant, to try to get a sense of whether you're dealing with a nematode problem versus a bacterial problem, look for a yellow halo. Oftentimes with foliar nematode, you'll get those angular leaf spots, but no halo, while with a bacterial infection, you'll get the angular leaf spots with a halo.